Hello, and welcome to the Lucidus podcast, where we explore everything because I believe everything is connected to everything else. And also because I believe there is this infinite, unbounded potential within each of us in order to discover, reveal, understand that we need to take a look at all that is. So, this podcast is going to be me rambling again, which I think I'm very good at because it, can you guys hear that? Some very noisy car outside. It leads me where we need to go. It leads me where I need to go. So I wonder if, first of all, I want to say, I think it would be fascinating if for just an instant I could experience someone else's experience. I think at first it would be like horrifying and startling. I just think our experiences inside these bodies and minds is so very different. And to suddenly be dropped into someone else's body and mind, I think would be very startling. And then I think it wouldn't take very long before we would begin to see some similar patterns, or I think it would quickly iron out. It would be like, oh, okay, I get how this person works. I get what they're doing, and it's very similar to what I do. Only I do it. Blah 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 blah. So what I'm about to share, so much of what I share is my experience, which of course it's difficult for me to convey what it's like to experience myself. The same way, if you imagine trying to take your inside experience and convey it in such a way that I viscerally can experience it. That's what I try to do so much. That's what I'm going to try to do today. And today feels important to me to share this because I need to understand this more deeply. I need to remember it. I also think it would be interesting to start living it as opposed to just knowing it. Okay, so for many, many years, I have been just fascinated by time and space, this three-dimensional space and this, quote, one-dimensional time. And over the years, I've come to think of them honestly as our parents. Like they're like the womb that we're in. So time and space come together. They create this womb where we are having this experience. And I don't believe time and space are all that is. I believe there's something outside of time and space, which is interesting because in some of the latest findings, I won't get all the terminology right, in our scientific cosmology, they're beginning to understand that there is something outside of time and space. They're not sure what it is, but there is something that you can go beyond time and space. Very cool. Why is this so cool? Not because I've kind of intuited it, because I wrote this into my book. And I wrote this again in 2020, The 8 Temptations, which I am still working hard just to get the first few chapters out. And it's funny because let's say I was writing a romance in the Deep South. Well, I wouldn't need to explain very much because we all kind of have an idea of a romance. We have an idea of the Deep South. I could just say, they're driving down this beautiful mahogany oak lane, and you would understand. I wouldn't need to tell you what it meant to drive, what mahogany meant, what a lane meant, what an oak meant, right? But no, in the book that I'm writing, you've never been to this realm. It doesn't exist. And the beings in it don't exist. And the way you experience this realm doesn't exist. And so I'm having to not only convey it to you, but I need to intimately understand what I'm trying to convey. And what I believe I'm trying to convey is actually incredibly close to what I think reality is, beyond the five senses. So I think reality absolutely is the five senses. I do not negate those, and I advise you not to negate those. We absolutely live in this reality. Our five senses are not only paramount to our experience here. I think they're sacred. I mean, I think they're sacred companions for us. But to experience our five senses in this reality with a greater understanding of reality, that's my journey. Okay. So recently, I wish I honestly could find the readings that I was reading about this. I can't. It's that weird thing where you find something. It was in a scientific journal. It doesn't matter if you believe me or not. That's not the point of this podcast. Okay, so I'm going to try to explain an experience I had today. I'm going to do my best. Has to do with time and space. Okay. One of the things about me is I have always exercised. And that may be hiking in the mountains, it may be yoga, it may be in the gym, it may be dancing, but I'm always moving my body. It's a part of who I am. I love to move my body. It doesn't mean whatever. So that's enough. Um, my favorite, my least favored form of exercise is in a gym on a stationary machine. And I would consider like a treadmill, a bike. So the machine isn't actually stationary, but I am stationary. I don't like it at all. But I have learned when I injured my back about a year and a half ago, it's all I could do. And so I started just like riding the stationary bike, which is like just the most dreadful thing in the world for me. So, but through that experience, I began to play with time and space. So there were days where I would go and I would set time and I was going to have an experience of time, meaning I'm going to ride, let's say for 30 minutes. Okay. It doesn't matter how I can put the level anywhere I want. I would tell myself I'm going to ride for 30 minutes. It can be as easy or as hard as I want, but I'm going to experience time. And time has its own structure. Other days I'd go to the gym and I'd say, okay, I'm going to bike for 5 miles. Whatever, however fast or slow I do that, doesn't matter, but 5 miles. So I'm going to experience sort of space. So what I began to realize is that it became a form of meditation. It felt a lot like sitting on my meditation cushion, which I do 2 hours every day. I sit and meditate. So it became like sitting on my meditation mat meditating, because I was just simply whatever, I was on a stationary bike and I'm just aware of either space, which was distance. Distance is space. I'm either just aware of me doing space, and I'm either doing space quickly or slowly, however I choose that day. Or I'm experiencing time. I'm just watching the time tick. Doesn't matter how hard or how easily I'm working, it's time. I'm experiencing time. We talk about time and space. There are these two energies. Again, and this is another really fascinating thing they're finding. These two energies come together and sort of make this fabric, right? We talk about the fabric of time and space. And they're finding that only when those two energies are connected in some way, let's say like you're plugging something into the wall and suddenly there's an electric current. Well, it's when these two connect that we have anything occur. Thought connects time and space. Something as simple as thought. Actions obviously connect time and space. There's all types of things. But so let's say we have these two fabrics and they're connected by our thoughts, our words, our deeds, and others. I mean, there's a whole universe out there, right? I'm not saying just us, but I can only right now convey, understand this through my experience. So through my thoughts, my words, and my deeds, I connect time and space, and things come into being. Things happen. And at the foundational level, they're understanding that's where the waves become particles. And that's where we create the instant in time. I know this is so much. It doesn't matter if you understand it, because I barely do. So I'm sitting on a stationary bike, and at first I was just playing a lot with time. So I would just do a certain amount of time. And I would just notice that depending on how hard I worked, my experience of time was different, right? If I did not work hard on the bike, my experience of time was that time flowed quickly. Okay? My experience when I worked hard on the bike is that time was very slow. Time was very slow, meaning I was aware. I was very aware of what I was feeling and what was going on. And then I began to have other experiences with time where my workout was easy and I was bored. Easy workout and I'm bored. Time was so slow. And then I'd have, same, I just set a time and I'd work out hard, but I was aware in a meditative way, and it went so fast. So my experiences of time were never the same. It didn't matter if it was hard or easy, right? So I began to understand time as an experience. And it was an experience based on mental, my mental attitude isn't the right word, my mental energy, literally the energy of my mind. Whatever the energy of my mind was, kind of dictated my experience of time. It did not matter how hard my body was working. Meaning my body could be experiencing great discomfort. I'm working out really hard. But if my mind energy was in a certain flow, time passed. So I began to have experiences of time, just experiences of time as its own being. Time as its own being. Let's say time is my father. Let's say it's a masculine energy. So I have experiences of this father time. And then I began to do more of space, and where I would set a distance. Say, okay, I'm going to ride for this distance. Doesn't matter if I ride fast or slow, I'm just going that distance. As you know, same thing, no surprise. There were times where I would ride slow for that distance, and I seemed to cover, just experienced space. And why this was interesting is I would look at the clock, and I would have to remind myself, it doesn't, that I have to remind myself, time doesn't matter, which is so strange in our society because we're obsessed with time. Everything happens on time, on time, on time, 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 time. So to suddenly erase that from my mental framework was weird. The time does not matter. I would look at the time. Time doesn't matter. You're riding for this distance. Riding for this distance. You ride as fast as you want. You can get there as fast as you want. And I did that at first. All I did was I just was like, how fast can I get there? And that was interesting, because I still wasn't looking at the time piece, but it was just like, how quickly can I experience space, right? How quickly can I experience space? And the space one was even more fascinating for me. And I would say space is feminine, right? Like it's more like the womb, but nothing happens anyway, we won't get into that yet. But let's say space is feminine. And that was more fascinating for me than time. Time seemed more like a direct experience. And space it's like you never quite knew where you were in space. That's the best way I can describe my experiences of space. So today I'm riding on the bike and I'm doing a space day, meaning I have a certain distance that I'm going to go on the bike. And I've gotten better, and it's become very meditative. And I've gotten better at not even looking at the clock piece on the digital console in front of me on the bike, and just watching the space, just watching, like I'm moving through space. I'm moving, even though I'm not physically moving through space, but I'm moving through space. Where am I in space? And again, I fell into, so this is the experience I want to try to convey. If you've never meditated, it doesn't matter. You don't have to have meditated. I think we all have meditative experiences in our life, whether we sit on a meditation cushion. I fell into a space today, a deep meditative space, and it was just, I don't know how long it lasted. I would say in normal time, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, so it was quick. It wasn't long. But in that, I suddenly dropped into a deep meditative space, and I could, viscerally, I was experiencing time and space as two very different things. And I began to understand that it is we who literally marry time and space. Like they are just like these two entities, energies, beings out there who are just holding, this cosmic realm. And that it's us that draw the fabric together. We're like the little tying the knot, so to speak. And in that space, I was in such a place where no thought, no action. It didn't even matter that my legs were still moving on the bike because there was no intention inside of me in that moment. I wasn't intending. There was no intention. There was no will. It was just sort of a vessel of experience in the moment. And in that, I realized that time and space were just there. And I didn't really feel myself part of either one, experiencing either one. I was just within this realm of time and space. And in that moment, I didn't feel like I was causing any effect. I didn't feel like I was causing any effect. I was not using my awareness in such a way that it was affecting time and space. It was just sort of like a bubble of nothingness, which happens, I think happens, to everyone in certain little moments. We have those little kind of bubbles. I would say it's almost like the bubble sort of pushes whatever this is that we're in. Like imagine if we're in the bottom of the ocean, it's like our submarine or something that we're, deep down and makes this little pocket of air around us where we're just sort of allowed to look around and see and feel what's around us. Understand it a little more deeply for what it is, which reminds me of This Is Water by Wallace, David Foster Wallace. Did I get his name right? Anyway, he has this great This Is Water speech. So in those, 10, 20 seconds, I was held in one of those beautiful spaces where I got to experience time and space as two very distinct energies or entities. And the understanding that not only am I the sort of conduit that create the knot in between them, but that my mental framework, as well as my mental energy, as well as my mental vibration, are what dictate how that knot is tied in my experience of time and space. This is super important for me in writing this book because it's a different realm, and time and space occur differently. They're both still there, but they've been refracted in such a way that the experience is different. And it allows the participants in this realm, the people that choose to go there, to experience themselves in a new way. And I think that takes me back to where I started, which was, imagine if you could experience another person, how different that would be. If you suddenly, let's say you're a very wired person, just like, and you suddenly are dropped in to someone who is grounded and quiet and solid. You would not even know. You would be like, this isn't even a human. Like, this is a rock. Right? This can't be a human being. There simply can't be this much like solid, still, quiet in one human being. But same in reverse, if you're like this solid, still, quiet human being, and you're suddenly dropped into, let's say some hyperactive 8-year-old, and you're like just blown out of your mind. Like, how can all of this be happening in such, what is going on? So that, and why would that be interesting? Because experiencing someone else so intimately helps you understand yourself. Right? It's a reflection back to, there's a different way to be. And we can see that, but imagine like literally being dropped into it and having that intimate experience of, oh, this is how it is to be someone else. And then, oh, well, then this is me. This is even, I now understand me even more, having experienced them so intimately. So imagine going to a realm where time and space are suddenly different and you are confronted with yourself in a new way, in a way you've never experienced yourself. You're still yourself. You took everything with you. Nothing has changed but time and space. And you're suddenly having an experience of yourself in a different time and space, in such a way that you can't run away. No running away. No running away. Oh, shoot. So I'm reading this. Let me see if I can. Oh, darn. I hope I can find this really quick. I wanted to read this really cool thing to you. So I read, a friend gave me a book like 15 years ago. I don't know, maybe not quite that long ago. And I read it and just was like blown away by it, but it was also kind of too much. Just kind of, like, wow, what was that? I think I read it twice. Really gave it due diligence. I loved it. Loved it. But then it was kind of like, oh, that was just like so much. And then I ended up just giving it away. And then I was sitting there the other day and I was like, I need to read that book again. So I went to the local used bookstore. Buy your books used. I know. They don't buy them used. I want to. And I grabbed the book. So, Reality by Peter Kingsley. Shoot, I don't think I'm going to find what I wanted to read. Maybe I will quickly. I don't think I'm going to find it. Darn it. Oh, I found it. I knew I'd read it recently. I'm a big highlighter. Got my highlighter out. Okay. Okay, this is it. Oh, this is why I wanted to read this to you. So my experience of time and space over the last few years, oh my gosh, just the trauma of what I have called the trauma of my life, which I'm so glad. It's like I'm finally figuring some stuff out about all of that. So happy to be able to say that. But it's interesting, time and space. In order for me to not live in the past, or to not live my past, I need to learn how to inhabit time and space differently. I need to learn how to inhabit time and space differently. I need to learn how to be in time differently. I need to learn how to be in space differently. I need to learn how to be in time and space differently. And as I was reading this chapter that I'm about to read to you, I realized it's slowly happening. It's made me happy. Okay. And so it says, and you won't understand it all, but you'll understand it. And so we come at last to the mystery at the heart of the eight. It doesn't matter, you don't understand it. There has been the sense so far of always following the path, of making the effort to keep up. Sometimes the hardest thing of all, after traveling a long way, is to acknowledge that one has finally arrived. Sometimes the hardest thing of all, after traveling a long way, is to acknowledge that one has finally arrived. So this book it doesn't delve into time and space quite the way I have, but it does. Does it speak about time and space? It's more about consciousness and thought. Anyway, but I read that, and in that moment, I realized I've arrived. I'm finally arriving. Arriving in a way I never have. Never in my whole life have I been in this place. And I don't know where I'm at because I've never been here. There are times where I think, well, is it going to be good or bad? It's probably going to be a little of both. That's what life is. But I'm okay being in the unknown. I'm more okay than I've ever been being in the unknown because I know only in the unknown do I have room to grow. Do I have room to grow? And a lot of this book is about it. This isn't supposed to, I wasn't making a podcast about this book, but since it's been a big part of my journey. So what I've realized after picking it up like 10 years later, or however many years it's been, so it planted so many seeds. It planted so many seeds and they grew. And I didn't know I was watering them. I didn't realize that. And so as I'm reading the book, I'm just like flying through it this time. I'm like, oh my gosh, I get this now. I get this now. I understand what was trying to be offered. And what it is, it's a poem written by Parmenides in 1000 BC. I don't know, something like that, in the many hundreds BC. And it was a riddle. I was considered an oracle. And that's how all teachings were done back then, was no one ever told you what you thought, what you should think or what you should do. You were given a riddle, and if you couldn't figure it out, well, then you just stumbled along blindly until you finally did. Which I think is kind of the way to do it, because if you're not willing to take the time, first of all, you can never tell someone what to do because you don't know what they should do, right? Your path is not their path. So first of all, don't ever tell anyone what to do. You have no idea what they should do. You can tell them what you've done. I think that can be helpful. If it's given in a way of, hey, I can tell you what I've done. And then maybe you try to glean something off that. That's the best way to teach. Or, through riddles. Because then each person can and does interpret it in their own way. And they interpret it as well and as deeply as they actually put the time into it, which is part of life. Life is not going to hand you, well, there's a whole, anyway, life hands us miracles. Life can be very generous. So I don't want to take away from that. But at the same time, life does ask you to show up and do some searching. Life has asked me to show up and do some searching, to do some ferreting, to do some seeking. So I still feel like I'm a little tenuous day to day, meaning this new place that I'm working to inhabit, I can still kind of respond to just the normal, natural, jolts of life. But I move quickly through them. I settle back down more rapidly, and I'm becoming more comfortable with understanding that I've arrived. And there's both an incredible peace in that and also a terror. Meaning, there's nowhere to go. I got nowhere to go and nothing to do. So what does that mean? So what does that leave me? That means to live. All I have left to do is just live. Just live. Learn to live. I've had many experiences with death, and I haven't died, even though sometimes I was ready to. Still here. I think death is going to be, I don't think death is going to be easy, but at those times when I was, close to it, I was like, I think it's probably a little bit easier. Death is easier than we think. I think living is really hard. So I think more and more I've realized I've arrived. I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have anything to do, which means it's just time to live. And that, I believe, is the first step and the first signpost of ending trauma. The first step and the first signpost of ending trauma is the understanding that there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. Everything's okay right here, just as it is. And it's okay to live. It's okay to live. And just there have been a few moments, a few interactions with my kids where I think they're starting to see it and settle with me as well. Meaning, I told them there was this really cool my kids and I, we share TikToks. So and then we sit down together. We sit on this couch right here, one on each side. The three of us sit here when we have our days together. And we share, we have sent each other TikToks and then we share. And it's really beautiful. And it's become, I don't care what you think about TikTok. I wasn't into it, but my kids got me into it. And it has become one of the most powerful things we do every week. And we get to, sometimes and we get to see it, we get to see and experience each other, right? Of course, I'm sending stuff about plants and about healing trauma. And, I send the stuff that I love. And then, my kids are sending the stuff that they're into. And they send things where I'm like, I did not know that. Like, I didn't know that that was like kind of a thing for you. So we learn so much about each other. We experience each other. And we often we'll stop and talk about a TikTok that one of us have sent for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. Like, we'll have huge discussions about something that one of us has brought up. And anyway, recently, one of the TikToks I sent to my kids, it says, the true ride or die are your children who stood by you and watched while you went through very difficult things, never stopped cheering you, and are there for you when you finally come out. And so my children have, sadly, I wish they hadn't watched me go through all the hard things I've gone through, because it definitely affected them. You can't watch someone you love go through that and not be affected yourself. And so, although, the things may be happening to me, definitely my children were affected by it. And so, but I can feel in the discussions we've had recently, we're all the three of us are all settling more into a space where there's nowhere to go, there's nothing to do. It's just time to live. And the first step in healing and away from trauma is just learning to live. Just learning to live. So that's my share today and my exploration of time and space. And I hope that, if there was something for you to glean from this, if it feels right to you, try to separate time and space, do an activity for time, and just know that, and I would say set it for a time that's going to sort of challenge you, meaning like if you normally read for 20 minutes, try reading for an hour, so that you begin to have a sense of time. What does time mean? Time, it's just time. Or set a space. And again, I don't know how I did that, riding a stationary bike, going a certain distance, and you could try doing that out. I don't know, but try to experience time as just time, and try to experience space as just space. And begin to understand your experience of each one of them at different times, and see if you can begin to correlate your mental state with your experience of space, and your mental state, your experience of time. And also begin to understand that you're the connector, you're the conduit that weds them, brings them together, that causes all the tiny little strings, all the tiny little notes of the universe, ching, that you're the one plucking the string with your thoughts, your words, your actions. Like, you really are master conductor of this universe. There's so much beauty, so much glory in that. It's a lot of responsibility, but I do think it's a very compassionate universe. So I don't think there's anybody judging you. Although I do believe there are some kind of scales in the universe. but they're just here to bring balance. I don't think they're here to condemn. So, all right. Hope you guys all have a beautiful day, and we'll see where I come next. Oh, and as far as the book, it's coming. I mean, it's just taking me so. Part of it is I'll write, and then I'll get what happened today, and I'll be like, oh, I need to reword that because I have a deeper understanding now. So I'm still writing, but I'm also just rewriting and rephrasing and re-explaining, and it gets better and better. So I'm super happy about that. I can see the huge leaps in how I'm able to explain this how I'm able to explain because how I understand this experience, and I'm super excited to share it with you. So have a beautiful day. Bye bye.